Steam Next Fests are week-long events where the Steam store is inundated by demos of upcoming games, and I love finding some hidden gems to get excited for. I've always wanted more videos curating which ones to play or pay attention to, so I'm throwing my own in. I played around 25 demos, but some of those were unplayable or not worth mentioning at all, so I'm reviewing 17 of the more interesting ones I played. I'm going to keep each review as short as I can, but you can use the chapters feature to skip to each game and get a very quick look at if I recommend them, I don't, or they're a bit more complicated to explain. To get as much information as you want as quickly as possible. Let's jump into it. Now this is one to watch. This seems to fall into a new genre of survival crafting games that are starting to hit their stride, following in the footsteps of Subnautica and Raft or the upcoming Nightingale. While there is gathering and crafting with traditional progression systems, they are story-focused with set pieces or even set worlds, and this seems to fall right in line. I find those games a little overwhelming and stressful, finding myself frustrated or bored by my lack of direction or the constant need to return to base instead of enjoying things at my own pace, something I find much easier to do in other games in the broader survival genre, with Valheim being something I absolutely adore. Voidtrain, at least from the small snippet of gameplay in the demo, seems to remedy this issue with not having as intense of a requirement on returning to base or navigating around, since, you're on a train, you go straight, train goes straight, right? And you stop for more linear parts and then back to the train. Having freedom in these more controlled environments removes some of the anxiousness I get in something like Raft, and made this one of the few demos I played that I wholeheartedly wanted to keep playing when I reached the end screen. Combat and weapon customization seems to be a more prominent part of this game compared to others, with standard first-person shooter mechanics in place and a tease at combat against other armed human opponents. And those are things I can see breaking up the pace of the standard exploration and crafting in an enjoyable way, and makes me excited to see how the full gameplay loop will play out. Check out the short demo now if you still have time. Big surprise here for Gestalt, Steam, and Cinder. It's a Metroidvania, Souls-like, more Metroidvania with Souls stuff. You have bonfire equivalents that refresh health potions, mechanics that heal you if you deal damage after taking damage. I mean, just look at the healing animation and see how much these dudes like Bloodborne. And I will never ever complain about following Bloodborne. The game looks amazing, way better when playing it than it does in still images, and the soundtrack is great as far as we have access to. The combat is snappy, easy to understand for Souls fans, great feedback on it. I just liked it overall. It has more RPG elements than I expected, with level ups and gear and items, and it has side quests. Feels way bigger than what I had imagined, and feels different than other games in the burgeoning genre of, Blasphemous and Hollow Knight, I guess. I would say give this a shot regardless of your taste in games. You're probably gonna like it. The System Shock remake by Nightdive Studios has been kicking around for quite a while now. I'm afraid to inform you that I'm one of those people that, even though I enjoy immersive sims and anything around that space, big fan of Dishonored, BioShock, all that stuff, and the kind of children that come from those, like the Bethesda RPG school, I have never played System Shock. I played Deus Ex, but not System Shock. However, playing the demo for System Shock has been an enjoyable experience. I don't know how faithful it is to the original incarnation of the game, but what we have here feels perfectly adequate for modern times. It is exactly what you might expect from an immersive sim remake done right, or at least that's what I imagine, because it plays well and the sound design, atmosphere, the voice acting, all really hit how they should. Especially knowing that its inspiration or its direct source material is as old as it is, combat feels good. The environment is crazy dripping in ambiance. I'm not going to say it's technically amazing, and I don't know what to expect from the later parts of the game more than what I've seen in some YouTube videos and retrospectives, but what I see, I definitely like. It feels like the sort of game that you want to sink yourself into for probably around 30 hours. You have to explore the space and map everything out, get a good lay of the land, get familiar with all its mechanics and how they interact, and there are layers and layers of mechanics, and as you might expect, different upgrade systems, crafting, modifications for different things. There's hacking progression systems through things like key cards as well, that are used for like security checks and doors. Just a lot of stuff from what I garnered from the demo, at least. And just a whole host of different things that you're going to be engaging with throughout the game. It feels decidedly more old school if you see the System Shock name and you're not familiar with it, and maybe you think this is going to be along the lines of a BioShock, which is a much more streamlined experience. No, it's immediate. This is something that's more retro inspired and feels much more like something you would play when booting back up something like Deus Ex. But that immersion part of the immersive sim of just exploring a space with detailed environments and storytelling through it, that sense of mystery where what exactly is going on and the anticipation of wanting to explore that space to understand the story of what happened here, what is happening here, and what might happen. It's all excellent. If you're a fan of this type of game, you're probably going to want to play this one sooner rather than later. It might not be everybody's cup of tea though. If you do like something like Dishonored, that doesn't mean you're going to immediately like System Shock. I do think that some parts of it can be a little rough around the edges. Things like the FOV or the ceiling height, some of those things betray that modern feeling. It feels retro and kind of cramped in a sense, but it seems to be attempting to be faithful to its origins. And maybe some of those complex mechanics or that faithfulness to more archaic design in some aspects could be a turnoff to some people. But I think it's worth a try, and at the very least, you should probably play the demo. While I was scrolling down the enormous list of games available in this year's Steam Next Fest, I couldn't help and stop on Slope Crashers. It looks adorable. It includes cute animals that are racing down mountains. They're snowboarding down mountains. I love this idea. Unfortunately, nope. Just nope. It's not really there yet. Generally speaking, it's very unpolished. The mechanics are not the smoothest. The controls are not the smoothest. It's just like the trick system is a little bit awkward. But I think the vibe and the aesthetics are really cool. In the promotional material, they're showing off a large variety of different levels, like deserts and beaches and stuff. It's not just going to be mountains. And that all looks really good. It has a variety of gameplay going for it. You have different events that function in different ways. So like score attack type of thing. You also have traditional races. There's different things going on in the game, but I don't think you should run out and play this demo. I think this game has a little bit of work to be done on it and probably is going to have some patches down the road post-release as well. But man, this game in a year or so, maybe on sale, I'm going to have a blast with it because I like dumb, simple, fun games like this. I say dumb respectfully in the sense of, I mean, it's a penguin snowboarding game with nice music and a lot of colors. That's sort of dumb. I like them. I don't think it's a quality standard that unless you see this and you're like, oh, that's my jam, you really shouldn't play this. It's not going to change your mind about that. But I want to play this. I want to do it, but yeah. Sons of Valhalla. Meh. It feels like it has the structure of an old Flash game and nothing grabbed me right away. It's a town builder sieging roguelike, which is original at least, but the structure seems to be building up a base and using resources to build supplies, to siege outposts and camps, and maintaining economics and production to keep making more things and capture more things ad infinitum. I don't think the concept is bad, but it doesn't feel really good to play, although I'm sure there's eventual satisfaction in building up huge armies and siege weapons and toppling cities later on. For now, it made me want to go play Mount & Blade 2, which feels like it would be a better time spent if I wanted to fulfill military fantasies. It kind of feels unpolished in a lot of regards. The voice acting of the main character is pretty mediocre, although the one from Odin was quite nice. It feels rough in many places. The actual combat isn't very engaging. It's not easy to understand, but even when you do understand it, it feels kind of basic for how many mechanics are going on. It's just a messy experience overall. I see the potential in this type of game, and I'm sure there's a way to make it very addictive and fun. This one just didn't grab me. I'm gonna go with that no. Inkbound comes from the devs of Monster Train, a great Slay the Spire-like, which, as far as I remember, was the first big game to follow in that style after Slay the Spire came out. And this game seems to retain a lot of the flavor and charm of their previous game, but in a much more unique genre blend. It's an MMO roguelite CRPG, which means turn-based combat mixing resources with spells. It could also be viewed through its progression as a card-based, turn-based strategy game, if you prefer, but within roguelite runs. I think its onboarding process is clunky, but once the mechanics click, they feel good, and it definitely seems to have a system in place to get its progression hooks into you with bars upon bars of progression. It might as well be a SoundCloud rapper with how many bars it has. Progression systems for pretty much everything to push further into trees and power up your character in a way that I expect to be very satisfying once you're powered up. With 5 classes to run the full progression over, and an emphasis on co-op, this one might be a hit within certain communities who find this fun. Although I think it's a little bit taxing of a gameplay loop to have the appeal of something like Deep Rock Galactic or Vermintide or Darktide if they ever fix that game. And it seems like it wants to emulate that vibe of game. You go out on runs, get things to help you power up and customize your character in each class, and repeat, ideally with your friends. Where it does differ, and the reason I'm cautious on it, is that there are plans to sell season passes with cosmetics and potentially other things down the line. There's a season pass that you can buy? As far as I'm aware, this is a paid indie game with further monetization practices within it, and I just get a bad feeling from that combination, be it through backlash or the game just not having the legs for the live service style that they're committed to. This might be something you enjoy, but neither the practices nor the style of game is for me, so I get a cautious rating to it. I didn't particularly enjoy the demo for The Last Case of Benedict Fox. I had seen this game, I think like at a Summer Games Fest or something equivalent, maybe a PC Games Show, and I was really excited. This Lovecraftian style is really interesting to me. I think it's a space that should be explored more often, and the idea of being a detective in a big mansion and manipulating people's memories, it all sounds really appealing to somebody like me, but I'm not convinced on the execution, at least from what I got in the demo. Movement feels just a little bit sluggish in some regards. It's difficult to explain. Like, the movement itself, maybe switching sides from running left to right, feels like there's input delay, but that's just how the game is, because on other things like the combat parry, it's instantaneous. So that isn't the problem. There's not a generalized input delay problem. It's just that some of the movements are not good. The standout feature of Benedict Fox is definitely its aesthetics. It's beautiful if you like this sort of thing, and even if you don't, the game looks amazing. There's so much attention to detail into creating spaces, even with what we see in the demo. The sound design, the soundtrack is absolutely wonderful, but when it comes down to brass tacks, the combat didn't feel all that well. I'm not sure about the map design and how that is going to pan out over the long run. It feels a little bit straightforward, like very small condensed spaces with small puzzles in them, nothing too grandiose, just kind of move from point A to point B and then to point C, kind of limited in scope. It doesn't help that I did not like the voice actor for Benedict himself at all, even though the demon that he houses within him is really cool and is a really well done voice.
Hold on. No sign of a struggle anywhere around him, and yet he defended himself desperately. But from whom? The trail of blood leads to this lock.
Not all is lost yet. I can guide you through his memories, Benedict.
Although there is a panning technique used with a really dark gravelly voice for the demon, the bass pitched one is only on your left ear, and that can get annoying. I would like that to shift around a bit, but that's just me being picky. The combat mechanics are just okay. They didn't feel satisfying, maybe even frustrating with some of the positioning of enemies, and I think that this is my fault. I was expecting more of a traditional Metroidvania, something along the lines of previous hits. I expected something more heavily platformer-oriented. And Benedict Fox seems to move and play a lot more like a modern take on Prince of Persia or Flashback. And maybe those expectations just set me up for disappointment by receiving something that I didn't expect. I'm mixed on it, because some of the elements that are more detective-y and puzzle-solvy seem really cool, but they would be better if the trappings of the actual movement and exploring the world were a little bit more the standard that I've come to expect from the genre. And it is lacking polished. It's just a demo, of course, but there are just a lot of rough edges. There's some issues with like the depth of field blur that's applied, creating hard lines. Sometimes some of the audio just wouldn't play on certain things. And I mean, it's a demo, but it fueled that disappointment a little bit more. I think you can still have a good time. There are elements of this that remind me of games in a very different genre, something like maybe the sexy brutale. And if you're into that thing, maybe those elements that are present in Benedict Fox will be enough to convince you. But me personally, I am no longer excited for the final release of the game. Even though it's on Game Pass, unless it receives a host of accolades and great word of mouth, I'm gonna be skipping out on Benedict. Oh boy, another Metroidvania. But not really. Grim Guardian seems much more of a traditional side-scrolling platformer than a Metroidvania, and I'm also quite sure that it belongs to an existing franchise that I'm not familiar enough with. In any case, it's beautiful and polished and plays exactly like I want a modern twist on Castlevania to play, but with the added bonus of anime.
10 out of 10, I recommend this game 100%.
It's the same deal as your classic Castlevanias. You have sub-weapons powered by limited resources found in candles, you have punishing difficulty if you so choose, since the game does come with a casual friendly mode, perfect for its co-op feature, and precise platforming combat with bosses that require pattern memorization and strict timings. That's not to say that what's here is just the bare minimum of doing something akin to a Castlevania and that's it. The gameplay feels really good. It's clicky, just immediate responses on everything you do, perfect momentum on your movements, and great punch behind all of your attacks. The animations of all the enemies, the environment with the scrolling backdrops, it's all really pretty, and it has a ton of personality. And I mean, I like anime, so that's obviously going to be an extra point in its favor from me. It's a simple game, but that just means it's excellent at what it does. Give this a shot, and if it looks hard, just play on casual. I personally wishlisted it, and it comes out in like 2 weeks, so excited. Mika and the Witch's Mountain is a video game that you can download and play from Steam. I don't know what to say about this one. It's a very short demo. It's cutesy and charming for sure, but a little basic, like a chill out and relax game. The premise is to do delivery jobs, to earn coins, to buy better brooms, to do more deliveries, until Mika can fly up the mountain back home and become a witch. You can jump, pick things up, and jump and glide on your broom. There's not much more to say. If that sounds like your jam, if what you're looking at on screen looks like your jam, go for it. This one really isn't for me. Also, if you're bothered by odd translation work from Asian games, this one will bother you. So I hope they shore that up before launch. But yeah, cute, chill, just glide around, deliver stuff, colorful, nice world. Yeah, Mika. Greedventory is a game that I've actually been looking forward to. I saw it in one of those events on Twitch or the Summer Games Fest, something like that a while back, and I thought the art style looked really interesting and the premise of the game is totally dope. It seems to channel a lot of old adventure game energy. You scroll from left to right, and you can click on doors to move up or down or advance in certain portions, but like a traditional adventure game, it's just a 2D plane across which you move. There's no platforming or anything like that. There's puzzles and there's a lot of dialogue. But the star of the show are the combat mechanics, which are centered around you using your sword or your weapon to swipe with a combination of different inputs, like holding down the mouse button while holding Q, and blocking with the right mouse button. But where you position your mouse is really important along with your timing. You have a series of combos with different attacks that you execute by holding down different keys that act as modifiers, and you fight enemies that have intricate patterns and it's kind of like a side-to-side punch-out. Some of these mechanics get a little bit more complex, and we even experiment with some of them in the demo. Some of the halfling enemies will throw potions, and those potions can be green or orange. The orange ones explode, dealing damage, and the green ones heal. So they'll try and throw the green potions on themselves and their party, and the orange ones at you, but depending on the direction in which you flick your mouse, you can throw back the orange ones and throw the green ones at yourself. Along with that is the obvious inventory aspect of the game. You have a grid inventory with different equipment slots. The loot has different abilities associated to it, so you could have certain swords or armors that give you X percentage more damage, more experience, and things like that. And the ring system, which is what allows you to modify your attacks with things like poison, bleed damage, stun damage, explosive damage. They could modify your heavy strike to make it cost more stamina but do more damage. I assume there will be a very long list of rings that you will be able to use in the final game and that will keep your builds fresh along with whatever equipment you have on hand. You can sell your equipment, you can repair it, and you obtain gold, which you can use to level up by having little swords that you can spend money on to level up, or you can use that money as currency in shops. So once again, Dark Souls never ceases to impregnate the entire gaming space. If you die, you respawn almost right where you were, but you lose a little bit of gold, and I assume that will scale much like it does in the Souls games. It's different, it's fun, the mechanics themselves are original, but could be highly original as the game keeps going on, and could lead to really intricate encounters that, depending on how the game functions, even the requirement of looting and being creative with the build you make to face certain enemies that could be weaker to some aspects or stronger to others. Yeah, that excites me a lot. All of that sounds excellent, but the game is going to live and die by the quality of its writing, since there is a lot of it. It's not voice acted, it's just text, and there are a lot of mistakes in those texts, so the writing really isn't on par with what I would expect. To be fair, from what I can observe through the magic of Google, I believe the developers of the game, Black Tower Basement, are actually in Ukraine. So not only are they going through some, let's say, difficult circumstances, but additionally, English is not their native language, which explains why maybe that writing isn't as polished. I think the general style of the writing is good, if not perfectly executed, but there are just some basic grammar mistakes that really pull me out. That's something that I think can be easily solved and would increase the quality of the game tenfold, since it is such an important part of it. I enjoyed my time with the demo. I think the game looks promising, just a fun game to play through. Sometimes I want a nice narrative story with some cool combat mechanics. This is a system that seems ripe for a roguelite, different loots and different builds each run, but, life doesn't always have to be that complicated, and I enjoy the peace of mind of thinking that when this game releases, I'm probably going to boot it up and play through it. This one is an easy recommend. If you haven't had it on your radar, put it down, and if you're unsure if this style of game, the humor of the game, or the combat system in the game are up your alley, well, hey, go check out the Nukefist demo as soon as you can. I have absolutely no idea why I decided to download Baldy Bounce, which is a game about a ball that bounces, in case you couldn't figure that out. However, I did, and I don't know, it's pretty fun. It's basic. It feels just above student project or game jam game. Maybe like a game jam game that got some more polish and love put into it, and then somebody decided to continue making it and just made more levels. The game is going to probably succeed or fail depending on its levels and the variety and mechanics of them. At its heart, it is a platformer. It reminds me slightly of Glover, if anybody remembers Glover. You control a ball, you can roll around, you can jump, you can double jump, you can dash, you can hover, you can stop the ball. When you're on the ground, you can aim and get a precise arc of where the ball is going to go. You run around an open level like in a traditional platformer. like Mario 64 or something, and you complete objectives and get chests. And then you get enough chests and you get a portal to the next level. You do also kind of upgrade your abilities as you go. Like you lower the cooldown on things, or you get more speed on the ball. It's cute, it's fun. It might seem weird to say this, but like, yeah, sure, if you have a spare 20 minutes and want to play something cute and fun, you can play this. Otherwise, yeah, I don't know, Baldy. Spiritfall is another really big surprise for me, at least. It's billed as a platform fighter roguelike. That's Smash Brothers, if you're not informed on that. If you're looking for more recent things, Multiverses or Valhalla. The game is really polished. It moves and feels really good. It's just an absolute blast. It's really fun to play. I spent an hour and a half on the demo, and I could have easily spent more. There's a lot of content. You have 2 weapons. You can go really deep into the upgrade trees, but look, I'm getting ahead of myself. The basic premise of the game is a combination of Hades and Slay the Spire. The combination of that is because from Hades, it takes the upgrade system, in the actual run, the way that the upgrade system functions is pretty much identical to Hades. You have different elements to how your moveset works. So you have light attacks, heavy attacks, long range attacks, special ability, then you have your dash, and you have passives. And each of these can be upgraded with one of the 5 different gods in the game, lightning, fire, ice, things like that. And you can apply an effect from each of those gods when you're selecting from their random list of upgrades they offer you to each of the elements in your moveset. So yes, essentially Hades. But the actual way the game progresses through the run is much like Slay the Spire. You're not moving from room to room like you are in Hades. You have this big vertical map with all of the nodes mapped out, so you can pre-plan your route. You can go hit specific gods if you want to make a specific build. You can plan to go into harder rooms that have better rewards. You can plan out when you want to stop and heal, and if you want to go for artifacts or relics. I'm not sure how they were called, but they work pretty much the same as in Slay the Spire, just passive upgrades that you equip. You can also find secret nodes on the map that offer you a chance to fight a 1v1 Smash Brothers fight, essentially, that is going to give you even better rewards. And then at the very top of each of those vertical maps, you get to fight a boss. And then that repeats after you kill the boss, you get another vertical map. So basically Slay the Spire. Truly just Slay the Spire again. But the combat that takes place in each of these nodes is the big difference. So you have partial upgrade mechanics like Hades because it's a combat-focused roguelite, but the progression of Slay the Spire and then the Smash Brothers fighting all in the middle. The fighting itself is similar to Smash Brothers. Maybe it's more similar to something like Valhalla, but you can see it on screen. I hope you're watching the screen for this game at least. It's just so beautiful. It works so well. It looks great, and it feels just as good to play as you're seeing it. Maybe it takes a little bit of time to adjust to it, but once you've got it down, it's awesome. I imagine that the game later on is going to be even better once you can explore more of the upgrades and get better, more overpowered builds. It's going to be a blast. I don't know how much content is going to be in the final game. The demo does tease the 3rd weapon. So in the demo, you have the hammer axe, the fists, and they show you the silhouette of the bow, but it's not actually available in the game. I don't know if there's only going to be 3 weapons. It'd be pretty cool if there were more, but truly, it's just so fun. If you're looking at this and it's appealing to you even in the slightest, just go immediately play the demo. I think everybody should play this one. You could find something you adore in this game. It's fun, and I suspect you're going to end up wishlisting it or looking for it down the road. Afterimage is something special. Let's not beat around the bush. The most impressive part of this game is undoubtedly the fact that it is mesmerizing. The art style is fantastic. It looks so good. It has that vibe of like Ori and the Blind Forest, of games that are more hand-drawn, and it is yet another Metroidvania with Souls-like influences, or at this point, what I'm going to start calling Souls-light Metroidvanias. To be completely blunt, this is the game I am most excited for. I had no idea this existed before I played it from the Steam Next Fest, and It's amazing. I am so hyped to play this game. There's something about the world building and the music in combination. It reminds me of an isekai from anime, which for me is essentially comfort food at this point in my life. The gameplay itself is fluid, it is snappy, has good feedback on most of the things you're doing, the enemies, the graphics in general, just a lot of polish going on here. I have been gawking at it the entire time that I played it, and even going through the footage now. I'm really excited to experience the environment. The game tries to build up some lore around the world, which is not the deepest, but it's enough to get me excited to go through it and see what the game is going to show me. You know, I like exploring a world that is cool because then I'm motivated to explore more of it, anticipating the next thing I'm going to see. If you did not know about this game, much like me, and you like this genre, I strongly recommend you go wishlist it, and if you have time, play the demo right away. Here we have a game that's a little bit more bordering on that AA space than the traditional indies. Ravenbound is an open-world roguelite where you can turn into a raven and fly across the map. You choose your fights and rely on luck from what are, in essence, level-ups to craft a build. You need to use mana that you can get from chests to activate cards, which you select every time you obtain 3 fragments, and the cards can have a higher mana cost depending on their impact. This gives some freedom in how you handle your economy and choose your upgrades. The core of the game is exploring the different points of interest while doing side quests and main objectives to obtain rewards, unlocking further upgrades for your next runs in a typical roguelite fashion. You mainly deal with combat, and sometimes small bits of exploration, but mainly combat. The combat system includes light and heavy attacks with charged variants, guard breaks, perfect blocks, and perfect parries, and the combat itself is beautifully animated with colorful, well-made effects and a really fast pace, but is lacking some weight for my taste, with a lot of floaty movement and strong tracking on both your attacks and the enemies. It seems promising, and at least it has that beautiful open world and graphical quality to set itself apart from the deluge of roguelites in all shapes and sizes that keep showing up. The demo itself is timed, so once you leave the tutorial area, you get an hour of playtime, and I stopped after about 40 minutes or so. There's no planned release date, so we'll see how it shapes up after cooking a little bit longer. I must warn you, though, that the game does present a EULA, an end-user license agreement, and requires you to sign up for an account with an email address, which typically, for me, is a giant no-no. Although I braved through it for the sake of this video. If you, like me, don't enjoy being forced into giving a company your email address, steer clear. After some digging, this is a PC release in a saga that is already popular on mobile phones by a South Korean dev called Kiwiwalks, which experimented with console launches previously on Switch. Here we have it coming to Steam, and to my surprise, although the UI was a bit off and reminded me of things like Genshin Impact, I didn't catch its mobile origins, so good job there. It looks and plays great on PC, and gamepad support worked fine, although it didn't have button prompts. There's a lot going on in this game. It's a turn-based RPG, but with an emphasis on crafting and grinding, all packaged with cute graphics and a vibe I would describe as pleasant. You gather and hunt for materials to craft different items, and I assume eventually, spells or gear, and all of those things, along with the enemies, work on a daily timer that resets with you going back home, training up your stats, and sleeping until the next day. It's a daily in-game timer. This is an Animal Crossing, though. The combat seems simple, but well executed with bonus turns awarded on takedowns, and it appears that the total number of enemies in combat can go up way high to take advantage of area of effect spells and positioning. I assume there will be some targeted spells later on, or not. I mean, I suppose because the mechanic and emphasis on enemy placements and numbers seems ripe for it. It seems like something I would enjoy, along the lines of other games like Atelier Ryza, but once again the issue of localization errors rears its head with some broken English English here or there. The game is voiced in Korean. I don't think that's an issue. It doesn't need to be localized with English VO, but having broken English diminishes some of the charm, and if the characters and story aren't compelling, it would be difficult to justify playing this over other games. If this sounds like your jam, however, try out the demo, but it's getting a cautious rating from me. I can't be the only one that's starting to feel fatigued in the survivor genre, right? We've seen different takes on this come and go, some with active abilities or dodging, some that require aiming, some that are just really charming, like the case with Brotato. And if you'll allow me to be honest, none have done it as well as the OG Vampire Survivors. And yes, I am aware that the actual OG was Magic Survivor, but Vampire Survivors was the one that really refined it and gave us some of the staples that have now been reproduced in dozens of games. I don't believe that Vampire Survivors is the end-all be-all of the genre. There is some iteration with an eventual breakthrough that will surely happen, and it will arguably eclipse its inspiration once it does, and I couldn't be more excited for when that day comes, but in the meantime, yet another Zombie Survivors really does nail it with the name. It's another one of those, with some slight alterations. Instead of weapons, you get other crew members, and they each have a primary attack and a secondary attack, and they can both be upgraded as you level up. The aesthetics are different because the motif is zombies. Look, if you love the genre and play every one of these that comes out, this one is solid. But I personally have had my fill, and when I want to scratch that itch, I just play Vampire Survivors. So this is an old demo, and the game's been kicking around since Realms Deep and the previous Nukefist. It's an old school shooter, very much in the vein of something like Blood, just as advertised. Levels are interesting and intricate, mechanics are varied, environments have detail and storytelling to them. It's solid. It isn't blowing my mind like others in the genre. This isn't Sulaco. But when thinking of upcoming games in this field, and specifically if you are into this sort of game, this one is competent enough, and probably you want to play it because if you're like me, we don't get enough of these. The whole atmosphere of witches and dark arts is well done, and details like eating enemy corpses to heal make it feel more unique. It reminds me of Heat and Blood Rite for some reason. But yes, overall, this is a solid retro FPS. If you are into that genre, go ahead and play through the demo. And there you are, 17 games reviewed, well, demos reviewed. If I helped you find something you didn't know, or at least I entertained you with the video, go ahead and give it a like, or subscribe to the channel. I've got a really cool video dropping in 5 days already to go. And here we are, just hope you have a great time and enjoy playing some video games.